Welcome to another Northern Monkeys video. This time we're looking at the Intercessor squad and the different detachments and leaders you can have with these guys, as well as just some more general thoughts about how to use the unit in game. So here we have them, the Intercessor squad, the kind of OG Primaris unit. Not bad at all really. They 80 points for 5 of them. You can take them in units of 10, which has some uses, but we're mostly going to talk about the 5-man squads, who are a great little skirmish piece for Marines. Obviously the OC2 is very good, and they are one of the main sources of getting sort of sticky objectives, which is basically the ability that lets you move off an objective and still control it, as long as you've controlled it at least once. They just have that as a built-in ability, and it's not seen many other places in Marines. I can only think of like one stratagem about in the Raven Guard detachment where you get that. So these are your main source of it, so it's a good reason just to stick one unit in, because against certain enemies who don't have anything in deep strike, it just lets you control your home objective and still have the Intercessor squad as an asset. And they are quite an asset. As benefiting Space Marines, they actually have, basically they're all armed with these bolt rifles, which are 2 shots each. They all have 3 attacks each in close combat. The sergeant will have more. And they end up over a single round dishing out 35 plus D6 attacks on average, which is obviously just enough to completely overwhelm like a enemy chaff unit and the like. So again, Space Marines, they do Space Marine things, and they're very good at it. I think Intercessors are a nice, efficient little unit for that in terms of their data sheet. Let's talk about their abilities. So we have here on their data sheet abilities, one we already talked about, the sticky objectives. Basically, they control an objective even after they've moved off it. It's really good, but it does require some kind of analysis on your part to use it right. Because if you just do this and then walk off and don't think about it, but your opponent has a single sort of cheap unit in deep strike, they're going to come down and steal that objective from you. There's no way they aren't, and then you've really put yourself in like a bad position of having to go backwards, which is generally not something you want him to do with Space Marines. You know, they're very much about creating space for themselves and pushing forward with like pressure, and using the fact that they shoot and fight well to do that. So against some opponents, you might be better off sort of sticking the objective of these Intercessors and then moving them back to screen. You can sort of put them in any kind of weird configuration and they'll take up quite a bit of space in terms of their bases. So yeah, they're pretty good. And it's also worth talking about target elimination. This is sort of a new buff that just kind of got slapped onto the unit as part of the general Space Marine buffs, and it's quite mad. Basically, whenever they shoot, as long as everyone's firing at the same target, all of their bolt rifles get 2 extra shots, which doubles the amount of bolt rifle shots they get. So the unit fires 20 bolt rifle shots from 4 guys. It's pretty mad. And the bolt rifles are great, you know, they're strength 4, AP 1, hit on 3s. Now, it's not the most impressive profile, but you get the sheer volume, and on top of that, you really have to think, well, what kind of buffs can you put on these guys? You know, with Oath of Moment, just as a basic buff, all of a sudden that's hitting on 3s re-rolling, wounding most things on 5s or 4s or even 3s or 2s. You know, this will absolutely chew up a squad of cultists or guardsmen, anything like that. So yeah, that ability, target elimination, is actually silly. And once you get them into the larger like 10-man squad, all of a sudden they're putting out like more than 40 shots from the unit. Which is actually something that's genuinely worth buffing. You know, they become a real sort of shredding unit. And with the AP1 sort of being default and the Marines having access to things like Ignore Cover, it threatens things like Eldar Aspect Warriors and all sorts of stuff like that, and even other Marine profiles fairly efficiently. Now, in terms of the loadout you can take for this unit, there's loads of different stuff. Like for the basic Space Marines, it's a very confusing looking like data sheet in terms of what you can actually take. But generally, it's all kind of boils down to, well, do you want to swap out the sergeant's bolt rifle for a pistol? The answer is no, you don't, because he gets double the number of shots on his bolt rifle. It's also, where do you want to put your ranged weapon, which is the Astartes grenade launcher, which is like a little buff. You can just put it on any member of the unit. The trick here really is to put it on the sergeant, because that way the sergeant can be the last guy standing and he has all the war gear, so therefore he gets to, like, even if you've just got one guy left, he's still a very powerful guy. The grenade launcher is genuinely good as well. That crack grenade with its AP2, it's a really nice bonus just to add on top of all those bolt rifle shots. Now as well, you can give your sergeant different melee weapons. Honestly, you can't really go wrong here. Like, if you've got him equipped with the chainsaw, it's fine. It's still 5 attacks with AP1. It'll still hurt some stuff. I personally prefer the Power Fist just for the accuracy, and it tends to make the Sergeant, like, when he's running around, like, if all his squad dies, the Sergeant's running around, he's firing off, like, 4 bolt rifle shots, a grenade launcher, and he has a Power Fist. He's actually quite dangerous there. You know, he'll kill a few Space Marines just on his own, as benefiting the Sarge. So yeah, I think that's generally what I'd like to go for on these guys. They have all these other guns, but I think now with the new special ability around the bolt rifles, you always want to be keeping the bolt rifle on your Sergeant. And in terms of a melee weapon, the Power Fist for me, its consistency just kind of ekes out the Thunderhammer or the power weapon. Now in terms of my personal thoughts and my play kind of using these guys, I've generally had a positive view in the mod edition. So I've made my guys out of the old some 30k and some Space Marines Heroes stuff. So, I mean, that's quite a nice use for your old tactical Marines, you know. Just take 5 guys with bolt guns, maybe the Sergeant with his Power Fist or whatever you have on him. Just run them as intercessors. As long as they're on the right base size, I think that's totally fine. And they're very obviously intercessors if they've all just got bolt rifles. Now, there's some great stuff going on with these guys. For example, here you can see I use them to stick in my home field objective, and now that that unit of Deathwing Knights you can see hiding in the background, they've come down. That was the only real deep strike threat, which means that these guys are safe to advance out and bring their guns to bear, as well as being here a screen for my important Stern Guard and character unit. There's a big unit of bikes there waiting to come flying in and try and flatten them, so it's good to have the intercessors being able to get in the way. And that's their real strength now. It's that like 2 for 1. As long as your backfield's safe, the intercessors can just move out and start getting in the way. And they genuinely are a threat to a lot of things, you know, especially enemy sort of chaff and little skirmishers like, what they call Vespid. Those things, these guys will just shred them with their guns. And always being able to advance and shoot with the assault keyword on their bolters. Really, really good. Now, as well as that, they're actually great for just contributing to even a massive enemy. Like, if you've got Oath of Moment on it, even if it's got like a 3-up save and high toughness, it's like, well, it's fine to just fire the 20 shots out of your intercessor squad into it. You'll chip a few wounds through. So yeah, genuinely just a great unit, and really, really worth having in your force, just as a one-off, I think. That's generally how I prefer to run them. So the great thing about intercessors is there's almost no detachment where these guys aren't good, because they just kind of do their thing, you know, they stick you the objectives, they move around, they fire on enemies, they generally put out a lot of attacks. They're just decent. So there's no list where you're really going wrong putting a unit of them in. Now Gladius is great with a Storm of Fire, potentially getting +1 AP and ignores cover. Combo that with Oath of Moment, these guys will actually do a very serious amount of damage. So I think it's definitely, they're always welcome in Gladius. Vanguard Spearhead has some great stuff. Again, they have their Strike from the Shadows ability. That's a stratagem that basically gives you +1 to hit and +1 AP at an enemy over 12 away with these guys. That's pretty good, you know, hitting on 2s, you don't need that oath potentially, the extra AP might let you shred enemies that are relying on, like, you know, the 4-up save and cover, a bit like the Krieg Engineers, stuff like that. So that's a pretty nice one. Plus, being more durable at range thanks to the detachment ability. For those that don't know, you get stealth and cover against enemies shooting at you from far away. This can let you kind of make some early game plays where you like try and stick you in objectives that you might normally get shot off of. And as long as one guy survives and controls that objective, then it means that you get to move away from it and just leave it, and your opponent has to move out and touch it. So quite good for trading there. And Firestorm Assault, a little wasted since they have assault on their guns and it gives you assault. But the +1 strength to close range enemies is still quite nice for those bolters. And the Burning Vengeance stratagem, for those that don't know, this lets you get out of a transport after it's been shot at and shoot back. Now, the shooting back part might not be that good for intercessors, but if you can get out of the transport and land an objective and then sticky it, that's pretty decent. So yeah, again, almost all detachments can have these guys in, including Anvil Siege Force, which again, they have that heavy keyword and the Architect of War enhancement. These are both great buffs for intercessors. In Anvil Siege Force, the heavy keyword can mean that they can easily get +1 to wound, which is really, really good for all those bolt gun shots. And the Architect of War enhancement, this gives them ignores cover. So you could say, like, have a big unit of these guys with a Librarian. That would mean that they are 4+ invuln on the entire unit. Really, really good because it just makes them very durable. And They would also be firing out, potentially getting +1 to wound when they need to. They've got good OC to control objectives, and the Architect of War enhancement lets them ignore cover. Just really, really nice for like chipping away and destroying enemy units. Plus, having these, even running them in a little 5-man in Anvil Siege Force, you tend to have these big, expensive Gravis and Terminator units in Anvil Siege Force. So a couple of little 5-man squads of Intercessors running around won't do you wrong. Now, the Librarian's Conclave is also one where I'm a big fan of these guys. The extra AP and the reroll 1s that you can get from the different, what are they called, cults or disciplines, something like that. Really, really good with the Librarian's Conclave. Now, especially in Intercessors, like I said, the Librarian is also a good leader for them because they're cheap Space Marine bodies. He has shooting and melee, which kind of it matches them, which is really, really nice. So you just end up getting a really good, efficient unit out of these guys, and getting all those rerolls will really let you get the most out of their high shot count. And being able to get extra AP on them again is always great. So yeah, I think they're a good. Almost any detachment can take Intercessors, and any detachment can almost be worth investing in a bigger squad of Intercessors. Now, in terms of leaders for this squad, there are 25 choices, which it really made me laugh, thinking there's that many Space Marine characters out there, and almost anyone can lead Intercessors, you know, even like, I think Calgar can lead Intercessors quite hilariously. But there's only 2 choices that I think really shine above the others. A Lieutenant running a large squad of Intercessors can be very, very interesting. They're quite cheap as a combo, and the lethal hits really, really benefits their kind of like mass shooting. Especially if you've got Oath against a big target, you can just fish for 6s by rerolling all possible hits just to get the most out of those lethals. And the fallback ability really lets them sort of get the most out of it. Say something charges into you and kills a few of your Intercessors, you fight back and don't kill it, but on the next turn you fall back, fire all of their guns and charge back in and fight before them. Especially with something like Oath buffing them or one of the strats like Storm of Fire, you can really have a chance of just taking a chunk out of the enemy. And as well as that, having the Lieutenant buried in the squad, you know, you can have a power fist or a power sword, which is really, really good because it stops the enemy from being able to lock you down and being able to sort of charge into you with impunity, and just gives the squad a lot more melee presence and a lot more threat. Between him and the Sergeant, you'll dish out about 8 power fist attacks. Really, really nice, especially with those lethal hits. The other one as well that I've mentioned before is the Librarian. I think this guy's pretty nice in Intercessors. It gives the entire unit a 4+ invuln save, which really, really they like that because it makes them quite hard to kill in terms of how much you need to commit to killing them, which can really allow them to kind of like hold on to those objectives and get that sticky objective off and let you have more sort of board control and more flexibility. Sort of force your opponent to come out, especially if they're a big shooting threat. You can just tag your expansion objective early and not need to stand on it for the rest of the game. That can be really, really helpful. It's also, again, I think I said earlier, but it's worth noting that they have he has a good shooting attack and a good melee attack. So he kind of adds to them in terms of like, well, if you're going to use these buffs like Storm of Fire on your Intercessors, you might as well put it on the Librarian, who has like D6 shots, Strength 6, AP, it go up to AP 3 with Storm of Fire and ignores cover. Really, really worth it. And the same to some degree, if you're playing Ultramarines, the same applies to Chief Librarian Tigerius. He has an amazing shooting attack. I think it's 2d6 shots. Really, really strong. Really, really dangerous for your opponent. He hits on 2s as well. So if you're putting buffs on the Intercessors, you can put buffs on this guy. He also gives them a permanent buff of -1 to be hit, which is really, really nice again for that durability. And he gives them a free use of the Overwatch and go to ground stratagems, which the shooting buff that they get out of their ability to double their number of shots is just when they're selected to shoot. It's not in like your shooting phase, for example. So the Overwatch becomes even better on these guys, and genuinely worth doing, considering that Chief Librarian Tigerius adds like 2d6 shots to that already like massive pile of shooting that you've got. So yeah, definitely worth trying some of these out. I think they're great combos. Alright, we're back on to doing a few more of these datasheet reviews. I really enjoy them. I am sort of to some degree running out of units that I play quite regularly. You know, I like to only talk on things that I know something about. But yeah, if anyone has any other suggestions for datasheets they'd like to see reviewed, I think we're definitely going to start talking about some of the bigger stuff like Land Raiders soon. Anyway, like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Bye.